At SSA, he has led several corporate-wide transformation programs and produced sustainable customer and business results for a diverse set of clients. Some of the clients that Mr. Vijay has consulted in the pharma sector are Lupin Pharma, USV Pharma, Sun Pharma, Pfizer, AstraZeneca. Now I will request Mr. Vijay to begin with his address.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Vijay Bhunde. As a part of our this CAPA webinar, it's a pathway to robust process. Before I really start my journey, let me take you quickly through about SSA group companies. As an SSA, it's 15 years old company, started in 1999, focusing on the process reengineering, zero defect using the Six Sigma as a culture, understanding about the waste elimination using the Lean methodology. Post that, we have started focusing on strategic aspects of any business. That's where the business excellence and the strategy and the visioning of the organizations. In 2010 is where we have started our another business vertical, which is in terms of focusing on the design excellence. What we do now is focusing on the value-based consulting. In other words, for any clients, be it any sectors, be it any segments, the profitability improvement is becomes one of the important aspects of the requirement. So irrespective of the tool, that's where we go to the client, support them, help them in improving their profitability, working on the organizational cultures. SSA has got a global footprint as well, primarily in the Africa, Middle East and the Far East. This is SSA's leadership team. Saying Narayan and supported by Sashi Iyer, Naveen, Ganesh, myself, and we have got about 40 full-time professionals who are catering to these various services to this Indian as well as multinational organizations, irrespective of the segments and the sectors. Quickly, who we are? We here is to have the culture building and the organizational developments, as I mentioned even earlier as well. What we do is focusing on the organizational transformations, where the customer loyalty becomes important, and the cost reduction. That's what is something which is important again from the organization and the top management perspective. We always support the organization right from the strategic, tactical, and the operational levels. So depending on the need of the organization at irrespective of the level, we customize our programs and our support. We have got our global knowledge partners in terms of Restaurant, iGraphics, New Tech. These are our global footprints. These are some of the global assignments what we have done, including the Pharma and other segments as well. The Pfizer, Indonesia and Singapore. Capsugel, Indonesia. Lona, that's in Nigeria. In Muscat, Ultan, Indonesia, it's in Megasari. And the DHL, that's where the almost 11 Asia Pacific countries we were supporting them in the various business transformation initiatives. Just to give a quick about the various segments in terms of the telecom, pharmaceutical, of course that's very important for you and that's the area of interest. BFSI, petroleum and the chemical, manufacturing and the FMCG. So if you really look at the domain where SSA has actually consulted, it's almost each and every segments. What are the differentiators SSA has got? Value-based consulting, top management engagement, because that is something it's very important for any kind of the business excellence initiatives. It has to be top-driven approach. Converting all strategies into the projects. Not merely hand-holding, but it is important how do we create the internal resources for the organization as well. That's why the knowledge transfer. And the leading implementation. So, as a part of the SSA, when I say it's a differentiator, we don't just sit on the fence. We actually get into the implementation part of the floor, whichever is the segment. We have got our international certification program which is ISAT authorized, be it Lean and be it Six Sigma. Quickly, let me take you through what are the various pharma offerings SSA is actually in. One is focusing on the R&D effectiveness. As a part of the R&D effectiveness, in fact, SSA has developed a methodology called NPI Lean. That's a new product introduction into R&D process. Operational excellence and the productivity improvements. Relevance to the CAPA culture, again, that's something which is important, and that's what we are going to discuss in detail. Yeah. And the last but not least, which is important again from the process documentation simplification, which is again a heart of any pharma manufacturing or be it R&D organization. As a part of the QBD, this is where the SSS approach, where we focus on the QBD training, which has got a 3 to 4 days of different modules. We do support the industry in terms of the QTPP handholding while deploying this QBD and the QTPP CQA risk assessment and the design space. These are some of the steps which we follow in our basically 8 to 10 days of handholding support to the organization while deploying the QBD, as well as working on the design of experimentation and supporting the team for doing the right analysis, including the design, selection of the design, and then coming to the design space. These are some of the areas, some of the organizations where we have supported in terms of our QBD and DOE consulting. I won't spend much time on this. Lupin, AstraZeneca, USC, UCART, Sun Pharma, Aspen, MSN, Pharma. I just mentioned some time back is the NPI Lean, which is for the new product introduction. SSA has actually mastered the art of implementing the Lean in new product introduction. So methodology what we have followed for that is ARMOR. These are some of the results what we have actually achieved by deploying at one of the MNC Pharma. That is the lead time taken from the project siting to development of first batch. So this is where almost 6 months of lead time saving was demonstrated. Then the reduction for the time for the testing, especially analytical part. That's where again it becomes very, very critical. Without compromising on your compliance and the regulatory, how do you ensure that you can still minimize this lead time for you, the testing, be it your assay, be it your DSO and all those. And the last but another third project what we have done as a part of is that reduce the dispatch time from the batch preparation to delivery at site. Just to give you a perspective as far as the manufacturing processes are concerned in the pharma, we have done the Six Sigma deployment as a part of the operational excellence. So just to cite a few examples, reducing the capital filling loss, reduction in the foil consumption, improvement in the lot per shape, yield improvement in coated products, and of course the process stability of the one of the ingredients, as a part of your analytical methods. These are some of the projects which just now I talked about and the performance, which is in terms of the yield, the process capabilities. And you can see that before you have, these are the different various performance in terms of the yield, in terms of the yield. Okay, like take an example, improvising the capsule filling. It's nothing but the filling stations. You have the lead before. Improvement was over 99.12%, and then from 99.12 the target was kept 99.6. You can see that we have achieved up to 99.35. Similarly, this reduction in the excess foil consumption, which again originally it was 7.26, target was 1.5, and when we have closed the project we could achieve 2.53. So these are some of the sample I just wanted to showcase what SSA can actually cater to the pharma into the manufacturing scenario. So that's for SSA. Now just start the core part of our today's webinar. Okay, quickly about myself. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm not a pharma guy. I'm a certified Lean and Six Sigma Master Black Belt, Business Excellence SSL using the EFQM model. I have been supported to various industries. I'm still into the pharma and the pharma. And in the pharma, QBD and the DOE applications, more than 100 design of experimentation. That's where I have facilitated into various industries. Consulted several pharma industries like USV, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Janssen, Lupin, Sun, and Aspen. Yeah, I'm a director at SSA and I have got a decade of a global consulting experience. Quickly, as a part of our agenda, we are going to talk about need for the CAPA, as many of you are aware, but I just want to give the perspective why that is needed today and why it is becoming very, very important irrespective of whatever, maybe whether I'm a generic or whether I'm at innovators level. What is CAPA as per the ICH guidelines? Existing CAPA practices, and what is that missing link generally when we follow the CAPA, and that's where basically we don't really get into the right root cause, and the possibility the recurrence of the same event happens is what I just want to capture on those. Creating this effective investigation mechanism, that's where I'm going to talk about the roadmap, what SSA has developed, keeping a regulatory requirement in mind, and at the same time the ICH guidelines, be it Q9 or Q10. And to supplement this, the methodology, I'm going to take you through one of the case studies so that the understanding about this approach and the case study, that I hope that will give a better clarity in terms of what exactly we are going to do in this CAPA as a part of our investigation and all. And at the end of it, we will have the question and answer. I'm sure you will have a couple of questions. So at the end of the session, we will answer to your questions. Let's get into this need for CAPA. Very interesting. Some of this, one of the important observations which is coming from the Wall Street Journal. Now, if you really look at being a pharma, which is very, very important, and since we are basically touching to the human base, so it is important whatever we are producing. But the observation which has come from the Wall Street Journal is the pharmaceutical industry has a little secret. Even as it invents a futuristic new drugs, its manufacturing techniques lag far behind those of the potato chips and the laundry soap makers. It's basically when I mention this, it's purely talking about the manufacturing processes. Yes, we are definitely good at our R&D. That's where we create various drugs. Yeah. Just one request to all of you, since I'm not a pharma guy, I'm a mechanical engineer. There is a possibility I might not get acquainted with some of the terminology of yours. You'll have to pardon me for that. But the intention of this webinar is to make you sense when we are going to apply this CAPA as a methodology. Yeah. So how do we really create those approach? How do we make sense to your own processes? And the last 2.5 to 3 years of my experience in a pharma, I will try and use to make some sense to you people. Now, the observation what we have seen as a part of why the manufacturing processes are not so good, what does that mean? Where do we stand today? If you really look at this, in terms of the Six Sigma, of course I'm not going to talk about the Six Sigma, but this is one of the quality metrics. And in the quality metrics, as a pharma guy, we are aware, we always talk about the quality in terms of the ppm. Now, if you really look at the ppm, I'm sure many of you are aware about the Six Sigma, but anyone who don't know about the Six Sigma, you can look at the ppm and the yield. So if you really look at the ppm, the biotech and the pharma, again I'm repeating this is from the manufacturing perspective. The quality performance at the manufacturing side, which is in tune of 3 to 4 sigma, or is nothing but 66,000 to 6,200, we are ranging in between that ppm level. Whereas the electronic and automotive industry, they have gone much ahead. Of course, they have this their entire, this continuous improvement journey. Almost they are traveling through this a couple of decades, or I can say century. Now, when I'm referring to this quality performance, it doesn't mean that we are supplying or we are sending a defective product to the market or to the patient. No, it's not that. When I'm saying the quality performance, it is purely when I'm going to do something at my manufacturing level, the reprocessing, or sometimes something goes wrong and I get into that investigations and whatnot. So in other words, I'm trying to see here that a first time right performance. That is something what we are trying to say as far as where do we stand as a pharma. And all of you will be surprised, and in fact when we were interacting with the many pharma industries, it becomes really an eye opener. So many times what happened, we have our own limitations in terms of the process because we have to follow the compliance, we have to follow the regulatories. But irrespective of those, still our first time right performance compared to other industry, there is a scope for us to improve. Having said that, traditionally, what do we do whenever there are certain problems? Because I'm just trying to take you towards our CAPA journey. Many times what happens, we have a various functions called quality control and then quality assurance. The definition of the quality control, quality assurance from the industry may be different. But what is that prima facie we do? At a part of the quality control, yeah, or what we try to do is we try to fix the output. Let me just give an example. For example, we have our cell phone, mobile phone. And the basic functionality of the mobile phone is to have a right communication or better communication. And just imagine one of the model of the smartphone which is there in the market, and one of the customer has experienced that the speaker is not working in that given a cell phone. Now what do? We actually give that cell phone to the service center. Service center try to repair that. What they are doing while doing this repairing? They are trying to fix that cell phone, the speaker problem in that existing phone. That is called as fixing the output. But what is important? Merely fixing the output is not going to help. So what do? The feedback mechanism is there so that the problem which has been experienced in that given the model of that particular cell phone, the feedback goes to your manufacturing process, that goes to your manufacturing industry. So that what happened? The problem which has been experienced into that particular product, that should not get repeated. Yeah? Or that we are trying to stop the reoccurrence of that defect, okay, in the subsequent batches which we are going to produce. So that is where we are trying to fix the problem at the process level. Now there is a third level where we fix the problem which is called as quality management, which is a holistic approach. So many times people do call it as total quality management. Yeah. Now if you really look at this our CAPA journey, it absolutely goes hand in hand with this, the problem solving, or the level of fixing of the problems. I will take you through the definition of each of these terms. The reason why I'm taking this opportunity, because many of us are aware what we mean by CAPA, because we are implementing this since last long time. But still I would like to take you to the important difference between the terminology itself, because many times we do confuse ourselves in understanding what is meant by correction, corrective action, and preventive actions. So I want to take this opportunity to give us some of the important insights and inputs based on my experience and exposure to the pharma as well as other industries. Now why is CAPA is important? Because all of us are focusing more and more into the CAPA. Why that is important? Because it is linked with many other requirements. Be it your complaint files, be it your non-complaint product, acceptance activities, audits, your medical device reporting and whatnot. What it basically is looking for, ensure the problems are detected and resolved so that recurrence should not happen. Some of the interesting statistics, if you really look at from the warning letters which has been issued by Office of Scientific Investigations. Now if you really look at the pattern over the period of time, the last couple of years, this warning letters which has been issued by OSI, it has increased phenomenally. Now be it those warning letters in terms of your good laboratory practices, bioequivalence, clinical investigator and all. If I really want to put the statistics behind, and if I do really do some little analysis of the top 10 FDA items, interestingly more than 50% the issues lies with the CAPA, be it your non-QSIT inspections or even it is your QSIT inspections, that is quality system inspection techniques. Even then there also it is that more than 30% the issues are related with the CAPA. Now this is something which is alarming. This is something which is very important, and that's the reason why now all of us, and that's the reason why all of us needs to basically enhance our understanding about the CAPA. And how do we basically create a structured approach? And I'm going to take you in the next half an hour in understanding that particular approach. Yeah, half an hour to 45 minutes. What is the expectations, regulatory expectation, if you really go by ICH Q10 guidelines? What the regulator is expecting that any pharmaceutical company should have a system for implementing corrective actions and preventive actions. They are looking for structured approach to investigation process and ultimately determining the root causes. Many times we do get confused between the root cause and symptoms. So in my subsequent slide, I just want to emphasize what do you mean by the root cause and what do you mean by the symptoms. Now what their regulator is looking for, the level of efforts, formalities and documentation, it should be in line with the level of risk is nothing but doing the risk assessments. And of course the guidelines which is there as a part of your ICH Q9. And the methodology should result in a product and the process improvement. And of course enhanced product and process understanding. These are something which is important. That is what the regulator's expectation is. Now I'm not saying that we don't know about all these things. But still we are facing the problem because that number indicates, in spite of doing all those, still the numbers, more than 50% this complaints or the warning letters are coming from the CAPA. That means somewhere we are going wrong in understanding and and applying this in this approach itself. Let's understand from the Q10 perspective. Before getting into the Q10, let me explain you what is the scope of recent guidelines. Now, if you really look at this entire pharma product life cycle, be it your pharmaceutical development, technology transfer, then your commercial manufacturing, the product discontinuation. So these are the different guidelines. These are the different ICH Q guidelines, whether Q9, Q10, whether it is a development related, analytical related, or the risk assessment. Yeah. If you really look at each of these aspects, my Q9 and Q10 each actually cut across from my development till my product discontinuation. That means the inputs or the expectations or the guidelines given by Q9 in terms of the risk assessment and the Q10 understanding the CAPA, the application is not only in the manufacturing. This application is there right from your development till your product discontinuation. So let's understand what is CAPA. Of course, as I said, I'm going to explain this, considering that some of you are starting from the scratch. Yeah. What we are trying to understand is one of the well-known CGMP regulatory concepts. When you talk about the investigation, understanding the issues, correcting the discrepancies or the problem what we have experienced. Yeah. And while attempting, we have to ensure that the reoccurrence should not happen. That's precisely what we are trying to say as part of the CAPA. If I really want to put it in other words, if something goes wrong in terms of the fire breakouts, what is important? Correction to put the fire out is basically the first step what I'm going to do as a part of the correction. As a part of the corrective actions, we need to understand why the fire took place. Of course, in this your entire CAPA journey, your correction, corrective action, the preventive action, yeah, it has to happen in the sequence. Just to give an example, if the fire comes out, it's very important for you to do the correction immediately instead of getting into the analysis at this point of time. So do that correction, then go back to your analysis, do that corrective actions, yeah, and understand why the fire started and ensure that prevent it from the recurring in the future. Your CAPA systems needs to be able to facilitate the repair and the improvement of your identified problems. That's precisely what we are talking about. But this is what is an layman can understand. Now let's understand again from the Q10 perspective what it says. Whenever you are applying your corrective and the preventive actions, it has to be a structured approach for your investigation. It has to have a specific objective in determining the root cause. And as I mentioned some time back, it has to be in line with the documentation, your efforts, and the risk assessment with the Q9. ICH Q9 guidelines. So that means whatever the CAPA we are talking about precisely when I am going to talk from the pharma domain, the requirements are well prescribed in your Q9 and Q10. Yeah. Now what is the end in mind of your CAPA methodology? It talks about product and process improvements and enhancing the product and process understanding. Now getting into the specific definition, what the Q10 says, when I talk about the corrective action, action to eliminate the cause of detected non-conformity or other undesirable situation. That's something what we talk about the corrective actions. Preventive action, action to eliminate the cause of potential. See, it's very, very important for us to distinguish between these two words. One is something what I have detected and I'm trying to fix it. Yeah, so that reoccurrence should not happen. But when I'm talking about the preventive action, I'm talking about the potential non-conformity. Yeah. That means that non-conformity I have not experienced, okay? But depending on your various trend analysis, yeah, you in the manufacturing scenario you must be doing that your OS and OOT trained. So before that failure happens, how do I look at the trend? How do I know that failure doesn't come? So you try and take the proactive measure to that. Yeah, we're looking at those potential non-conformity. Now, if you really look at the bottom, as a layman's understanding and coming from the ISO 9000 guidelines, the corrective action is to take a is to ensure a prevention of reoccurrence of the problem which has been experienced, whereas a preventive action is taken to prevent occurrence. I want all of you to appreciate this. Corrective action is to prevent the reoccurrence of the event which we have experienced, whereas the preventive action is to prevent the occurrence itself. That's what is the precise definition about the corrective and preventive actions. Why I'm basically emphasizing on this? Many times, with all our domain expertise, we still sometimes we fail to understand the difference between the corrective and the preventive. Yeah. So to summarize again this, a correction is the action taken on the event where we have experienced a problem. That's my correction. Now the corrective action is the action taken on the defect what we have experienced so that the reoccurrence of that defects can be avoided. Whereas the preventive action is action taken considering the potential failure well in advance, and I'm stopping the occurrence of the potential defect itself. This is something which is very important for us to understand, because once we have this clear understanding, it's easy for us to go and get into the implementations, or rather when we are going to do the investigation and all those. So in other words, when you look from the quality system point of view, a mature quality system detects a problem before they occur and then prevent the problem. So what does it mean? That it's always important for us, how do we proactively take an actions before the problem comes. But yes, as we are in our manufacturing scenario, day-to-day life, we may not be in position to identify those potential every time. Yeah, but at least what I can do, if I have experienced certain events, I need to do the analysis, investigation in such a way that the reoccurrence of that deviations, reoccurrence of that event should not happen. That's where my prima facie I'm going to focus on the corrective actions. What are the CAPA subsystems? The CAPA subsystem, when I'm going to talk about, it's basically focusing on the manufacturing, your management controls. It talks about the material controls, because CAPA system is not only purely getting into your machine related or any specific man related. It's like in our feasible analysis, we use that 6 M's. There is a man, machine, material, methods, measurement, mother natures. Yeah, and so these are the 6 M's what normally we use. So when you are going to deal with your CAPA systems, you have to focus. You have to have the management controls. You have to have the material controls. Your manufacturing as well, laboratory and the system controls, equipment and the facility controls, design controls, and your documentation and the change controls. So whenever you are going to basically talk about the CAPA, your CAPA systems is going to touch base either of this or maybe all of them at the same time as well, depending on where that event has happened. Yeah. Some of the important aspects what I would like to talk about that. What is that missing approach in the existing CAPA? Now, when I talk about this existing CAPA systems, what we do? Apparently, whenever we have certain problems, we start focusing on the symptoms. And when I say the symptoms, and when we focus on the symptoms, that means we try to fix those symptoms of the symptoms. Just to give an example, what do you mean by symptom? Many times, we do experience a headache. Now, headache is a symptom, because that is what I am experiencing. Now, what do we do normally? Our first correction, what we do in case of the headache is, we take some kind of the tablet or medicine and then try to see whether we are getting relief out of it. Now, we may or we may not. There is a possibility that headache may reoccur, because what I am trying to do, I am trying to focus on the symptom. Now, I have not got into that detailed investigation why that headache is there. Now, I need to understand what is the reason behind the headache. So I will keep on, deep diving to the next level. I'll keep on asking, what is that is basically something which I can stop, which I can take an action at the root level. Now when I'm going to say then headache, for example, okay, one of the reasons could be indigestion. Now again, when I'm going to look at the indigestion, now the indigestion is something which is again it's the next level of symptom. Still it is not a root cause, because why the indigestion happens is something what I need to understand. So probably when I'm going to do the further deep diving, asking the next level of why, then probably I know when I'm going to answer to that, why that indigestion, I may come and ask, and probably I may get an answer, oh yes, probably my eating habit is something which is not appropriate, and due to which that indigestion happens. So that means at this point of time, my eating habit is something which is actionable for me. Now we have to be very realistic when we are going to do this root cause analysis. See, sometimes people do get into the endless why analysis. So some people can come and say, no, I can still keep on asking the question, why that my eating habit is so poor. I may get into that. But we have to stop at certain level where the things are actionable. Now when I say if I start by journey with my headache, now headache is something which is not an actionable, because headache is because of something else, that's called indigestion. Now in the indigestion, again someone say that, I can take again medicine and I can probably take care of my indigestion, but still using the medicine for the indigestion, still I'm not getting into what is the root level of my indigestion. So probably I can't take the actions which will give me a permanent relief. So that's the reason I am asking the next level, what is that is actually causing me that indigestion, is what I'm asking the question. And then that answer to that is, yeah, eating habits. Yeah, this is something probably at this point of time it's in my control. So let me improvise my eating habits. So at this point of time, I can say that the eating habit is something which is a root cause of my headache. Now when you are looking at this entire tree diagram, okay, what normally we do, we focus on the symptoms. We try to basically curb that issues. And that is where you might have experience in your organization as well. Some of the events are basically the recurring. Why those are recurring? Because I'm trying to fix the problem at the symptom level. Whereas what the regulatory, or for that matter compliance, or for that matter even the organization is looking for, can we focus on the actual root cause? Now if you focus on the actual root cause, is something which will help you to avoid that reoccurrence. Because when I'm going to talk about that corrective action, the real corrective action happens only when you are trying to attack on the root cause. And that is something what is important. Now, the statistics says there are basically warning letters coming from the regulatories. So more than regulatory, it is important and it is in our interest. How do we ensure that from the business angle, yeah, from the good practices, how do we minimize these reoccurrences? See, we are doing the processes. There is a likelihood that something will happen, something may go wrong. It's not that you are going to go to absolutely zero defect. Yeah, although that's our journey. But what is intended, if you have experienced one deviation or one event, the regulatory, compliance, or for that matter your top management, the business is looking for, how can I minimize that reoccurrences? And that's where the gap is there today in our analysis. When basically we have, in my past couple of years of experience, when I was reviewing this couple of the CAPA forms, and it's not a rocket science for you to analyze why that reoccurrence happens, because sometimes we don't have a time to get into that analysis. Yeah, many times that's one of the concerns which is being expressed by the manufacturing boss. We don't have a time. We have so many priorities. Now what is happening? We try to get into your just firefighting mode. Somehow fix that problem and go ahead. But the problem here is that when we claim that we don't have a time, but we have a time to keep on fixing that problem again and again and again and again, and then getting into the loop of this, regulatory as well as the business and of course the compliance issues. So even if you have to spend a little time, when I'm saying the little time, when I'm going to explain the case study, you will realize it is not that many hours you are going to take or many days you are going to take to really close a CAPA. And today, one of the important aspects of the missing line is, in many manufacturing setup, the responsibility of the CAPA right from the initiation till closure lies with your quality department. No, that is something which is one of the mindset if you really want to really get into that real definition of the CAPA. Your quality function is actually facilitated to you to understand and probably document those. But that doesn't mean that is a responsibility of the CAPA is a quality department. The CAPA, the understanding of this analysis investigation has to be there with each and every operations into your value chain. Be it your warehouse, be it your core manufacturing process. Within manufacturing, you may have blending, you may have compression, you may have filling, your coating, and in your dispatch also. So each of these people who are working into the process, each one of them should know if something goes wrong, how to do that investigation. Today, many times I have seen the people do scared, or people do refrain themselves while addressing or attaching the CAPA, or many times they are not participating into the CAPA brainstorming as well. Unfortunately, at many places, I'm not saying that all of you, but many places, many times I have experienced, the moment you are talking about the CAPA analysis, people do hesitate even in participating in that. Now, if you really look at the root cause of non-involvement of the people at all the level is something else. I will never blame these people into the systems. The reason why, because they are being scared. The moment you say the CAPA is something, it's like a crime. No, it's not a crime. The CAPA is something, if something goes wrong, which needs to be understood, which needs to be analyzed, investigated properly so that recurrence doesn't happen. And today, the understanding of the CAPA to all the level, irrespective of the organization, irrespective of whether it is generic or your innovator, the understanding of the CAPA at all the level is absolutely not there. Merely few people in the organization only understand the relevance, importance, and the rationale behind the CAPA. So what is important? We need to create the culture of CAPA understanding in the organization. Yeah. So that is where the missing link what I have experienced, and why we have taken this initiative of this CAPA webinar to basically to remove that wrong mindset from the people. At the same time, remove that biasness from each of the people in the systems, and at the same time to give them a confidence it is not a crime. It is something where it is in the interest of the business. It is in the interest of every individuals. Let's look at this. The next two slides will give some idea. When you talk of the corrective action process and the preventive action process. Of course, this entire the CAPA methodology and the program, we do take almost 2 + 2 days or 4 days of the training. 2 days of the basic and 2 days of with the statistical level. So in this one hour webinar, just want to give a perspectives so that you try and understand what do you mean by this. Look at some of the example. Under what circumstances you treat this as a corrective actions. So reviewing and defining the problem or non-conformity is your corrective action. But if you look at the next, your preventive action, identify the potential problem. That means you are not experienced, but you are anticipating. So that is something which is definitely as a proactive measure. Finding the cause of the problem, finding the cause of potential problem. One is what we are saying on the left hand side, corrective action is something which you have experienced. The preventive, sorry, you are not experienced, but you are anticipating. Sometimes it happens. Some of the events are getting repeated. You know why? Because if one event happens, there could be a multiple reason why behind that failure. Just take an example. Yeah, you have got your coating machine, and in that coating machine you have got your spray nozzle, right? And probably if you are not getting the uniform coating, and the spray nozzle is one of the reasons behind that non-uniform coating, what do? You try and analyze, and go to the root cause, that what has gone wrong into that nozzle due to which that uneven coating is happening. You will definitely go to the root cause as a part of your corrective actions, and you will try to fix it. But what is happening? As a part of the corrective action, you have dealt with the reason which you have experienced. But there is a possibility next time again I may get the similar problem of non-uniform coating on my tablet. Now what do? Now the event has got repeated. In the first place, what I have done the root cause where I have identified as a part of the nozzle. But now the reason is something else. So when you are going to do this root cause analysis, what is intended purpose behind it is that you have to identify what went wrong in terms of the real root cause, and for the same process potentially something else also may go wrong which you are not experienced. So as a part of the CAPA process, it is expected you should think proactively. Today it is a nozzle, tomorrow it can be maybe a viscosity. So what is important when you do that analysis? Yeah, my analysis is for the two things. One is for my existing and other is for my potential. So if you do that real analysis considering that potential in mind, that's where you get an opportunity to prevent. That's what I'm saying, the prevention of the occurrence of that event because of any other reason apart from your spray nozzle. So that is where when you are going to do this CAPA analysis, you have to think from both the perspectives. Just to give another thing, developing the action plan to correct the problem and prevent a reoccurrence, develop a plan to prevent occurrence. Yeah. So there is a subtle difference between the corrective actions and the preventive actions. And many times, in spite of working in this process for years together, we do get confused with these two terminologies. The next slide basically talks of the situation and the example. Look at one of the situation. When are you going to name it a corrective actions? Name it a corrective action only if you already have a production non-conformity or the process non-compliance. That means again I am readdressing this. Some of you must be thinking why Vijay is repeating this again and again, but the guys, this is where the fundamentals. And if the fundamentals are not set right, then again it's not that the template filling process. It's not that only the CAPA format filling the process. I need to understand what am I writing. And many times that's where the regulatory has got a concern. People don't understand the basic fundamental behind this terminology, and they start filling the form and submitting, and that's where they are being questioned many times by the compliance of the regulatory. To give an example of this corrective action, product filling specification, customer complaints, then use of the obsolete documents, audit findings for the product non-conform, the process non-compliance. This can be your example of your corrective actions. Now when you are going to say the preventive, name it a preventive action whenever the product, the process or system is still in a conformance. Please underline the word. Still you are in conformance. The process product is in conformance. But you discover the root cause with the potential that can create a non-conformance. That means understanding and evaluating and analyzing what could be the potential, which I have explained you through the example of the coating process, is where I want all of you to understand. Now the question comes, is that so simple? Yeah, it's not. But then how do I really see and how do I take the proactive measures or the preventive measures? So that's where when you are going to look at the various trend analysis. Yeah. Now from shift to shift there could be variation. Now from your day to day, from machine to machine, or day to day, batch to batch, you may have a variation. Still it is in your specification. But the moment you are looking at this trend itself is one of the insight for all of you to understand, oh yes, this is where I can take the proactive measures. Yeah. So these are some of the examples for you to understand the difference between the corrective and the preventive. I hope this is giving us some kind of the insights to all of you, although I'm absolutely at the basic and the fundamental level. And I do believe unless until we don't have a clarity on this basics and the fundamental, there is no point in getting into the something which is very high-fun tools and techniques. Yeah. Now if I really want to understand, now the question is that I have explained you what is CAPA, what is corrective, preventive. Now how do I really create a roadmap? Is that only the template which has been created by my system or the quality team has issued? I have to go and fill that. What is that the roadmap? Because it's very easy for someone to tell that you are not doing right. But it is important for someone to tell, oh yes, I know that I'm not doing right, but can you just guide me how to do it? How to create that framework is something what I'm going to address in the next couple of minutes. Now, if you really look at the CAPA procedures, when you're looking from the 21 CFR, don't ask me what is 21 CFR, because as I said, I'm not a pharma guy, but you guys are well aware about this 21 CFR. But what it talks about? It talks about the every manufacturer shall establish, maintain procedures. And the more I'm saying the procedures which can be understood easily by everyone in the organization. Many times we do create the complex procedures, and that scares you a lot more than anything else. So how do we create that? A simplified version of your procedure is something which is important. You'll have, when you want to establish, that is a defining, documenting either into the written form or electronically, and then implement that. The number and the complexity of the procedure, it depends on the organization, depends on the complexity of the organization, the procedures of the organization. But irrespective of the organization, there has to be some standard guidelines. Now, what are those guidelines? If you really look at how the entire CAPA process works, if I really want to break up into 3 different verticals, for every event, there is an input. Now, that input, it can be your internal or external source. Yeah, when I say the input is nothing but the source from where that event has been identified. Now, the source can be your customer complaint. The source can be your staff observation. The source can be your internal audit observations. This is your source. So what I'm doing, I'm taking that source with me and I'm going to the process. Now in the process, what I'm going to do, I'm going to basically analyze the data. Now if you really look at, I've given these references of the various clause and subclause. That means all these your guidelines, your pharma guidelines are only giving this inputs for you, that which clause needs to be taken into consideration while analyzing, investigating, creating the actions, verifying and validating effectiveness, and then implementing those changes. Yeah. Then how do you ensure that disseminating those information and submitting the report for the management review? All these are the fundamentals of your entire CAPA process. Yeah. In some or other form, we are actually complying to some of this. Many of you, many in the mature organization, yes, they follow each of these. But now what happens? When I'm going to look at this 820, 100, 82, 183 and what not, the many people to get scared into this sub-clauses itself. Now what they're interested, can you just give me a simple roadmap? Where I need to understand, when I'm going to talk about the problem, how do I define the problem? Yeah. How do I basically investigate that? How do I evaluate and what not? So if I really want to convert those entire understanding of the requirement, this is where something called as a 7-step approach. Now this 7-step approach, these are there in, of course, your FDA guidelines, in your basically the compliance documents itself. But as an SSA, what we are trying to do, we are actually putting those into the simplified, structured roadmap, so that all of you can understand and implement when we are going to take each of the case. So those 7-step approach is nothing but identifying the problem, non-conformity incident, evaluating the magnitude of the problem. Again, this is the most critical step. I'm going to explain it through the case study. The most critical step of your event, because is that every issues or every event needs a detailed investigation, or if at all a detailed investigation, up to what extent that investigation has to happen, I really don't know. So the most important part for me to understand and evaluate the intensity of that problem, magnitude of that problem, the understanding the potential impact, the risk if I don't basically tackle. So this is the critical step for each one of us who are actually handling this event, because that will help you to simplify the efforts required at the next level, which is called an investigation. Because the investigation is something, it's the depth of the investigation is depending on the problem intensity, right? Now, whether should I really go into the detailed investigation, which may take a couple of days or couple of weeks, or I can just get with some of the simplified investigation, maybe 1 or 2 steps. How do I judge that? For that only that evaluation is a step. Many times what happened, what I have experienced, the people without understanding the intensity, without doing that evaluation, they straight away get into the analysis. And that is where the problem lies. So once I do that evaluation, then I create my investigation plan. And that investigation plan has to have certain things in mind. You just cannot create your investigation plan based on your random thinking. So there are certain guidelines. Yeah. So once you do that, then you are getting into the analysis. So that's where you are going to perform the thorough analysis, where you are going to talk about the potential, where you are going to talk about take the input from your investigation and you will continue. And then you create the action plan to to tackle those root causes. And then you create an implementation plan, go for the implementation, understand while at the same time when you are going to do the implementation, it is important for you, before implementation, understanding the impact on my upstream and the downstream. Because many times what happens, I do implement the process at one point of time, or maybe one of the process in entire value chain. But am I really analyzing if I implement the process, one of the process in value chain, it may have impact on my subsequent processes. There is a possibility if I do implement that now, how that's going to be impacted from the product perspective, from the documentation perspective, from the compliance perspective. That impact analysis is something which is important. Again, this is another dimension where we don't really focus too much. And that is where the reoccurrence happens. That is where the non-compliance happens. That is where even the regulator keeps on asking you the questions. And they are questioning you and they're doubting your intention that are you really doing that detailed analysis which is expected. Then we will go get into this implementation, and then once you do the implementation, verification. Many times we are good at implementation, but we don't really verify the results and the effectiveness of that action. This can be one of the critical area where your regulatory will keep on asking you many questions. We sometimes we implement and we forget, but we don't see how effective it is. We don't see whether that has really helped me to resolve the problem, because I need to basically constantly observe and monitor what I have implemented there. So if I really want to summarize this entire life cycle approach, my CAPA application is not only the manufacturing, it can be in the development part. It can be in the technology transfer. It can be the commercial manufacturing, and it can be your product discontinuation. Now, how you are going to apply at a developmental level, it has got its own way of understanding. But it's not that CAPA application is only in manufacturing. The CAPA is where you are anticipating something can go wrong. You are anticipating something, there is an opportunity, or you are saying that if I'm going to perform something, something will happen. Now, how do I really take care? I can apply the CAPA. So what basically this application of the corrective and preventive action which I mentioned is throughout this entire life cycle. So I don't want to basically get into only the manufacturing. The desired state is entire life cycle. Hope that has made some sense to you. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to basically take a pause for 2 minutes before I'm going to take you through the case study. Meantime, if you have got any questions, I'll request Pratik to probably make a note of it. And he is going to basically take you for the next 2 minutes, and I'll come back to this case study, so that whatever we have understood so far, I want to just give you understanding and flavor of how this entire 7 steps can be applied. Over to you, Pratik.
Thank you, Vijay. Now, we are going to take a small poll to understand what are the challenges according to you in your organization that you face with terms to CAPA. So I'm launching the poll, and it will be on your screens shortly. Thank you for taking the poll. I hope you can see the results on your screen. Now I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Vijay. He is going to take you through the case study.
Yeah, welcome back. So this whatever the CAPA briefing we had just now, you might have given some kind of insights to all of you. So before going for the break, I had mentioned about the methodology. That's an approach. Yeah. Now what I'm going to take you a small case study. Probably it may take me another 10 minutes for you to get some idea and how that is being implemented. Now during this case study, I request all of you to refrain, from maybe getting into the question of the terminologies. But my intention here is that whenever there is an event, how that event through the CAPA can be applied. So I know that you will have many questions in your mind. I suppose through this case study, some of them may get answered. So the 7 steps of the CAPA work, which just before break I had mentioned, one is identification of your problem, evaluation, and then I'm getting into the investigation, level of investigation, and everything I'm going to decide based on my evaluation. So friends, when I'm going to explain the case study, I want all of you to be attentive during this evaluation and investigation as one of the critical aspects, because many times people do get a feeling that what should be the depth of your root cause analysis. At the same time, how do I decide what kind of the form investigation I should do that, and up to what level I should continue with the investigations. So my request be attentive during those. So having said, after investigation you will get into your analysis, create action plan, okay, and then go for the implementations and ensure that post implementation you are having the right follow-up with your team. Sorry. Okay. I'm just taking you through one slide again back. The case study here is the variation in the TOC content. Yeah. So this is one of the event which has happened. Yeah. Now how this event is being addressed through the CAPA is what I'm going to explain you now. So I'm just trying to address now when you are going to go for that, the first level of your first step of your CAPA, that is identification. What is the objective? Is to identify the problem with a clear definition. Now when I'm going to talk about the definition is your problem should clearly mention what is the source of information, the detailed explanation of the problem, and the evidence of the problem which you have experienced. That has to be there, because this is very useful information for your investigation plan and the follow-up. Now this each of the step what I'm going to explain you, and then corresponding the case I'm going to explain you step by step. So this is what is the objective of your identification, and the case what I have talked about, this is how it has been taken. So if you really look at this request source, is where I talk about the staff observation. That means this is the input for me to start the CAPA process. So here in this particular case there was a staff observation. If you really look at the description of the problem, all the minute details, the date, year, yeah, and at what phase of your basically process, which documented report you have seen, at what time, and then what sample has been collected. If you really look at this, everything has been prescribed in your problem. So that is where when I mentioned, whenever you are going to identify your problem, it is important for you to know the source and the detailed explanation of your problem, what I mean. Yeah. So that is how it has been covered. The next, the part of your problem definition is evidence observed. So whatever the evidence we have observed, that should get reflected here. So if you really look at this, the TOC report, which has actually, as a part of the staff observation, they have observed that there is a variation. So I'm going to basically take out that TOC report, or I'm going to take that as your inspection report, or whatever is there, as a part of the evidence. Okay. Once I define my problem very clearly with the evidence, I go to the next level. I'm just giving you the 30,000 feet overview of this entire methodology. Now I'm going to get into the evaluation. And if you remember correctly, I mentioned, please pay your attention during this 2-3 important steps. Now what I'm going to do, as a part of the evaluation, before I really get into the investigation, I need to understand what is the intensity of this problem. Okay, I need to evaluate. And then I need to decide the level of actions required. So when I'm going to do this evaluation has to go with three different perspectives. One is the potential impact of that incident or the event which has happened. Now that potential impact I can estimate in terms of the cost, functionality, the product quality, my safety, the reliability, and again it is impact on the customer. So whenever I'm going to talk about any incident or any event, the intensity or the impact needs to be assessed through this. Now second aspect, I need to understand what is the risk to the company or its customer if I don't really act on this, how this is going to get influence or impact on my basically as a product, as a business, or as a part of my customers. Now once I do the evaluation, based on the evaluation, it's very important actions or important point why I want all of you to address here. The potential impact of risk assessment may indicate a need for some immediate actions to remedy the situation until a permanent solution can be implemented. That's nothing but it's very important for you to have an immediate correction in the system, right? So just an example what we have talked some time back. If there is a fire, what is important for me? The correction is to ensure that you take your those equipments and then try and lose the fire. So ensure that it's not going to be spreaded. That is something which is my immediate action. Now sometimes depending on this intensity, if you really look at the point what I have mentioned here, you can look at this. In some cases the remedial action may be adequate enough. Okay, so yeah, I'm just coming back to again this. So based on your remedial action, sometimes that remedial action may be good enough. Now that may not really require to go so much of intense analysis. Even my CAPA can be closed, yeah, by doing the specific documentation and completing the appropriate follow-up and all those things. So that means depending on the intensity of my problem or the impact is what I do the evaluation here. Now, how do I really apply this to my case? Yeah. So the same case I'm extending here. Now the problem description and the evidence what we have discussed. Now look at the preliminary assessment of the potential impact. Now you can see that products which were manufactured after the last water release and so might be impacted because of the TOC failure. So here they are trying to basically assess the risk by showing what may go wrong in terms of the product, in terms of the quality, in terms of the impact, in terms of the cost. So this gives me one of the important input to decide up to what extent that investigation needs to be done. Okay, and these are some of the recommended actions. So you can look at this. So these are some of the recommended actions what the team has done. That a manufacturing and cleaning activity stopped in the phase 2. Yeah. And then impacted batches were identified and samples for microbiological limit tests were planned. So these are my immediate actions. Now considering this my impact, now you can see that the 7th point in this, that looking at all this criticality, the detailed investigation for the TOC failure initiated. Now I'm getting into the investigation, and what do I do in the investigation? Objective is to document the procedure for conducting investigation. So before I really start my investigation, I need to understand what is the objective, what procedure I'm going to do, who is going to be responsible person for the investigation, and other sources. Setting the specific instruction to determine the contributing and the root causes of the problem is the intention here. Yeah. Now, while deciding the investigation plan, I may take into consideration my equipment, process, material, design, training, and all those. Now, extending the case for my TOC, what the team has done, they have done the brainstorming, and they have this is what the objective of their investigation or the action, and they have created this investigation plan. And who is going to do that? Okay. Now this investigation plan has been created. All the concerned people are going to basically act on that investigation. Now this is where you can see that how the team is going to act on that investigation. I'm still in the investigation, and the team is basically each of them, whatever the task has been given, due date has been given, they have completed. You know what the team is doing. If you really look at just a sample, I'll show you. The task was given to team. They are going back and they are doing basically that verification. If I really want to know what the detailed investigation have done, I can come here, right? So for each of those person, they are getting into the investigation, yeah. And during this investigation, when they are observing something which is like uncommon, yeah, this is where you can get a trigger or you can get a clue if you set up the right investigation process, yeah. And this becomes an input for you before going to your next level. So that is how each team into the CAPA team to whom we have assigned the investigation part, they will go back, they will do the investigation, they will come out with the details, and then I will get into the analysis. Now in this analysis, now I have the input from the investigations, okay. Now if you remember correctly, I mentioned to you, now the intention here is that I need to do the brainstorming. Now when I'm going to do this brainstorming, it has to be like a free flowing. So I have a certain backup data through my investigation, but at the same time, I need to see what could be the potential areas that might impact on this again and again. So I do the detailed root cause analysis. So one of the tools you can use as a fishbowl, yeah, there is a fishbowl diagram using 6 M's. So these are the different observations or different analysis, what has been brainstormed, and some of them have been experienced during the investigation, some of them have come up during my potential, during my brainstorming. And then I get into the detailed why analysis, because going to that real root cause is something which is important. That's where I mentioned the symptoms and the root cause. Instead of working on the symptom, I really want to get into my root cause analysis. So whatever the primary cause I'm going to identify, I'm going to ask each of the primary cause, what is that next level of the cause? Is nothing but I'm getting into something called why analysis till I reach to the root, and that is actionable. So this is how the team has done the root cause analysis for this particular event post the investigation. Okay. Now when you do this, again you may have multiple reasons behind it. Now are you going to act on all those as a part of my CAPA process? It may not be possible for me. So what do? I basically do that, the prioritization, because out of those so many root causes, something which I have experienced or something which are potential, yeah, I need to prioritize based on the 3 important factors, which is called as an impact, the rate at which this appears, the frequency, and is it possible for me to really control that. So I do that root cause prioritization, and then finally I'm coming here and I'm summarizing the prioritized root cause. Yeah. So I complete my analyze phase here with a detailed root cause analysis after investigation. Then I come out with the various recommendations of the solutions. Now I do some effort benefit analysis as a part of my solutions. And this is where the most important. Now I have identified the solutions. It is important for my each of these solutions. Yeah. I need to understand what are my impact on the upstream and downstream. So I do that impact analysis, which I mentioned to you guys some time back. So doing the impact analysis of the root cause is very, very important. So once I do this, then I get into my action plans, create those. You can look at one of the note. A preventive action is not required for all the situations. However, corrective action to prevent reoccurrence is required. So sometimes it may not be possible for you to get into preventive measure. It may be possible. That's not necessary that you have to always come out with the preventive. But what is important? Are you sure about that corrective actions? Preventive is something for better. It's always important for you when you are going to look from the longer perspective. But the corrective actions has to be there. So I create that my implementation action plan. What are those actions I'm going to do? Who is going to do? And by when? I create that entire action plan. Now when I'm preparing the action plan, guys, I want all of you to pay your attention. So when I'm going to implement those, what are the document changes required? Which process systems are going to get impacted? Yeah. And then if at all some trainings are required, what are those? I need to basically document all these things. So this is a part of your impact analysis itself. I need to complete that. And once I do that, I get into the actual implementation. And the last but not least is verification, which is a part of your follow-up process. So once this is being implemented, who is going to verify? Yeah, and to ensure that the CAPA. So this is my verification. Continue. To summarize this entire the case study what I have mentioned to you, define your problem as part of your identification very clearly. Get into the evaluation, investigation, and do that detailed root cause analysis. Critical and prioritized solutions to be identified. Do that impact analysis. Go for implementations. Ensure through the follow-up that this has been done, and you can formally close your CAPA. So this is what I thought. Let me just give you the flavor of how this entire roadmap works. And mind you guys, I have taken you through the case study. Some of you must be wondering, is it that it is, if I'm going to do this way, it may take a couple of days or a couple of weeks? No. Probably when you are going to do this one-off as a part of the one case, the first will take a time, but subsequently you will find that these 7 steps are becoming so important and so simple for all of you to understand and apply. Even within a couple of hours or maybe in a couple of days, you can complete this meaningfully, and that is what is, you know, in the regulatory or business is looking for. So that's it from my end. Now I'm coming back to your questions. So I request all of you, of course, my apology that, you know, the 10 minutes is what I took it little extra, but I thought it's important for all of you to give some important perspective. Now I'll just hand it over to Pratik for the question and answer.
Thank you, Vijay. Now we'll begin with the question and answer session. How we are going to do it, we are going to keep it very simple. We have noted down your questions from the chat, and we are going to take them one by one. We'll call your name, we'll unmute you so that you can have a very brief discussion pertaining to your question. So give us a moment, we'll be back with your questions and our answers. Hi, we are back. We are going to take the first question from Kiranmai Penmetsa. What is PAPC and how to develop a plan for occurrence? Is that through risk assessment? Is it always possible? Over to Vijay.
The very good, very nice question what you have asked, but unfortunately this PAPC is again the pharma term, and as I mentioned, I'm not from the pharma guy or pharma domain. Honestly, I don't have an answer to the PAPC, what is the full form. As far as your plan for occurrence and the risk assessment, now when I have mentioned this, the 7-step approach, when you are going to apply into the CAPA, it is precisely for your event. And if something has gone wrong, what I'm going to do into the manufacturing setup per se, I'm going to apply the evaluation, that is the second step which I have described, which I have explained to all of you, to understand up to what extent the intensity of this problem is there. Of course, I am not applying here as something called as an FMECA, that is failure mode effect and analysis. But the moment I'm talking about the risk assessment, I'm talking about the risk assessment during the CAPA. I'm not getting into the developmental stage of your product at all. But as a methodology, the moment you are going to implement certain solutions, yeah, as a part of your CAPA, when I mean the risk assessment is to understand up to what extent the event as well as the solution will have impact on my customer, on my process, on my documental aspects.
Now we'll take the second question. It is from Jay Kumar Mishra. How CAPA is important for major problem which requires destruction of material in question?
Okay. Just to answer your question as far as the relevance of the CAPA in the problems when you are talking about the destruction of the material in question. See, now when I'm going to talk from the CAPA perspective, what it says, I can apply when something has gone wrong, because it is important for you to understand what is that end in mind for me. Now, if something has gone wrong, I apply that 7 steps as we have discussed. Okay. Now, when you are going to talk about that material destruction per se, are you anticipating that something may go wrong as a part of the process? Is what you will try and do that evaluation well in advance. Okay. Now, that's where it is important. I need to understand where am I going to look into this. Am I going to use the CAPA for something which has happened earlier, or I am not experienced, but I am anticipating certain things? I am going to think from that perspective. That is where I will be applying the CAPA for those.
Right. The next question, or rather we have two questions from Syed Faraz Ahmed. In case any investigation is by using fishbone diagram we identify sub-case, then how should we proceed further for identification of most probable cause? Should it be through 5 whys or some other tools can be used?
Yeah, Mr. Ahmed, in fact, very important point what you asked, because this is where again the critical phase of your root cause identification. Now, when you are going to identify some causes by using the fishbone analysis, now what happens? You are actually identifying the primary cause. And the point what you have mentioned, if I really want to get into the root cause, absolutely you can use your YY analysis. You don't really require to use any different techniques, because my intention is to identify where that root lies. So I can use a 5Y along with my fishbone to go to the required root cause. Thank you so much.
Next question from Mr. Ahmed. What shall be the time frame to perform effectiveness check activity?
Yeah, again, Mr. Ahmed, it's when you say the effectiveness. Now, when I'm going to implement certain things, the intention of the CAPA is to avoid the reoccurrences. Now, the effectiveness is at least once you implement certain solutions, you have to have that maybe you are in a periodic audits, periodic check to see whether it is really giving the desired result. Now, the time frame, if you ask me, I can create this as one of the measurement metric or the process metric for me to ensure that it is really sustained, because the sustenance of that implementation is something which is important. So what I can do, I can track it for initial couple of months. As the time progresses, probably I can reduce the frequency, or I can make it a part of your maybe the audit process. If that event which you have handled was critical, absolutely that is important. Thank you so much.
Next question we have from Manohar Babu. He is asking, is there any timelines for CAPA from the day we identified a problem?
See, honestly, if you ask me, as far as the timeline is concerned, now when I'm going to look at the timeline, the moment you have identified the event, what is expected that your event identification
and then your investigation analysis, it has to happen. It's like a war footing. Now, the moment you have seen the event, the moment you do that investigation, because that investigation is something is important for you to ensure if there are certain critical parameters are there, those are not getting lost in the process. So investigation has to happen immediately. Okay. Now you can get into the analysis. So depending on the criticality of event, it can take maybe a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks as well. Now this is as far as your analysis, your implementation. Now sometimes people may do have a question, can I close the CAPA formally? Because there are certain recommendations probably which can be a budget base, which can be maybe a capex, and it may require some more time. What is important? In the given CAPA, you have to basically give your justification why you are going to take that much of time. But right from your analysis, right from your identification, investigation, and your analysis, that has to happen within a couple of days, if possible a couple of hours, and implementation depending on the solution what you are coming up. But a couple of weeks is what is desirable.
Next question we are going to take up is from Atul. Atul is asking, what are the ways to verify or validate effectiveness of CAPA?
Yeah, fantastic. In fact, that's very important question, Atul. So that is where, in fact, even FDA, nowadays you might have experienced even the FDA inspectors, even they come and they ask whether do you have any statistical approach. Yeah. So statistical approach or statistical, sometimes in the control charts, kind of, that may help you to show the effectiveness. And you will be collecting the data on ongoing basis. But control charts can be one of the way to confirm the effectiveness using the statistics. And second part, as a part of your audit process, because sometimes you may not have an opportunity to see something statistically. Okay, so in those cases, as a part of your audit checklist, you can use it and ensure that the systems are effective.
Next question. In fact, Dr. Ashok has asked a couple of questions. We are going to take them all in one go. The first question that he has asked, please throw more light on tools for addressing CAPA. If there are more variables, 5, why tech is not advisable right?
Hello? Yeah, I'm seeing some disturbance at your end, Dr. Ashok. Can you just minimize some background sound?
Just a minute.
Yeah.
It's the sound of the fan, I think.
Okay, okay, not an issue.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, this is regarding tools. Probably because the slides were taken through, then you have addressed that. I have seen it. But during the flow of the slides, I observed 5 Whys also were employed.
Absolutely.
From this fishbone analysis. So,
absolutely.
Because when there are more variables, what I have learned was it's not advisable to use this 5 Why technique. Because there are. What is your opinion?
Yeah, just to answer you. Now, when you're seeing that more variables, see, I can use the statistics for my detailed analysis. But the moment you're talking about the variables, it's very important for me to understand, I'm going to focus on the one of the event. And for that event, there are multiple reasons. Now that multiple reason when I'm saying, if I have understood you correctly, the variable can be a machine, variable can be a material, can be a methods as well. Or,
yes,
that's what you are trying to say?
Yeah. Yes, if there are more variables, then better statistical techniques like fishbone analysis or other tools can be used rather than 5 Why.
No, in fact, if you ask me, the fishbone technique is basically the basic tool. But in the fishbone itself, I really want to identify what is the root cause level. 5 Why analysis is a part of your fishbone actually. Okay? So the moment you are going to say in one of the, just to give an example, the coating part I was talking to you, if my coating thickness is inappropriate, now when you put it on the fishbone, you may say that something related with a machine. Now in that machine, you may have one bone saying that your the spray is inadequate. Now you are going to ask a question next, why? Why that spray is inadequate? Then you may get some next level of maybe the input. So that is what that 5 analysis is, not in isolation. It is actually a part of your fishbone analysis.
Okay.
So you are trying to ask a question at least 5 times why. So that is how the statistically it is proven. If you go to the last why, you should go back to your square one.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I hope that satisfies your question.
Yeah, but more interestingly, the second one, which is more important for me, because at times what we have observed is we do not have the management doesn't have patience to allocate sufficient resources to address CAPA.
Absolutely.
Even though they know it's a requirement by FDA. So it becomes very difficult for a QA head to convince each time, because as you are aware how the plant situation in a routine
honestly
a routine day. So before batch release, because it has to be addressed and then only it can be released.
Yeah, can I answer to this? Yeah, because there are still many more questions. But the point is, when we are going to talk about that, in fact, during my conversation, I mentioned to you that people do feel this is a responsibility of the quality assurance department, but answer is no. So that is where we are trying to break that myth, and when we are meeting the top management as well. So whenever if you want to take this CAPA initiative at your organization, in fact, it is important for some you to meet your top management and giving them the flavor, okay, that it is not the quality assurance alone department is going to be the culprit for this. Because many times what happens, the top management, as you rightly said, they don't have a patience. But prima facie, that could be the scenario. Because I was just consulting with couple of pharma in the last 1 or 2 years. But at the initial level, that's a problem. But the moment we start getting interacted with them and we tell them what is basically the implications of it, I'll tell you, it happens and they get on board of this.
So the thing is, why I'm asking this, because it looks simple, but what happens is, each time, a thing happens and that effect will be observed after some time. For example, if a mistake happens for that particular batch, the damage would be observed. By the time the damage is observed, that fellow may not be there in the organization.
Possible, no?
Always production would be there in the forefront to release the batch. QA will take a back seat.
Dr. Ashok, Dr. Ashok, sorry to interrupt you. Can we do one thing? I appreciate all these questions. So probably what we can do, we can talk you offline, and then probably I can spare a good enough time for you, maybe at 20-15 minutes also. Is that fine?
Okay, thanks.
Because there are many other people on the line.
Yeah, I do understand. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry for inconvenience. But I'll come back to you and we will have the detailed discussion on this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ashok. We are going to take up next question. It is from Mr. Frederick from France. Could we have the same SOP for CAPA and deviation?
Hey Frederick, this is Vijay. Now the question what you have asked, as far as the procedure is concerned. Now when you are going to basically do the CAPA, you are doing the CAPA for a deviation itself. Yeah. So that means something has gone wrong. It's not meeting the requirement, either my specification or the customer or my regulatory, whichever way you say. So that is what is basically the deviation. Now that deviation reoccurrence is something will be a major issues. Or first of all, fixing the deviation and ensuring that reoccurrence of the deviation is not going to happen is where I am going to apply the CAPA as a procedure. This very much can be applied for any kind of the deviation in the organization across the entire value chain, Frederick.
Frederick has one more question. Indeed, auditors ask to us, have you got SOP for deviation? And there is a second question for CAPA.
Yeah. So now when you are going to talk about the SOP for deviation, that means any deviation which comes, how are you going to handle? Because that is where when the regulatory or auditor is going to ask, the intention behind asking that, whether you call it as an SOP or the CAPA procedure, the intention is that. Now if the deviation happens, how are you going to handle that deviation? Are you going to take some correction on the deviation? Are you going to take some corrective action on the deviation? If you really ask, at the back of their mind is only to understand what is your basically the corrective and preventive action as an approach to handle those deviations.
Right. We'll take up the next question, and Mr. Dilip Kumar has asked the next question. Could you please provide some examples wherein you have implemented CAPA in the service industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, now the CAPA. Hello? Hello? Hey guys, there is a background noise. My sincere request, can you just take care of it? Hello? Mr. Dilip? Mr. Dilip?
You just answer his question. So we can probably answer his question, which is, could you please provide some examples wherein you have implemented CAPA in the service industry?
Now, if you ask me, as far as the CAPA is concerned, now there are two ways. When the entire webinar, what was intended was keeping the pharma industry in mind. But even if you go to service industry also or any manufacturing industry, now when you got your QMS, the QMS has got your provision to handle the non-conformity. That's where you are applying the CAPA. Now, what is going to happen when you are going to apply the CAPA in case of the service industry or any manufacturing apart from the pharma? Yeah, there are QMS guidelines. As per that QMS guidelines, I can apply. But if you really ask me, the end in mind or the purpose, whether I do in service or the pharma, the process remains same. That's what I'm trying to answer to your query.
Right. The next question is from Moti. Is it okay to release a product while its CAPA is still opened?
So if you really ask, again, that is where as I mentioned, Mr. Moti, as a 7-step approach, the second part is where you are trying to evaluate the risk. Yeah, you are trying to evaluate the risk of this particular deviation. Now, if that risk is very high, obviously your intention is not to formally fill the CAPA. Your intention is to basically analyze what has gone wrong, and probably I may have to separate that particular batch instead of processing it further if this has got a serious implications. So it's always important for me to work on the CAPA. Okay, I need to I have to ensure before going to the next level is, have I done the correction? Have I taken the corrective actions before going to the next one? Okay. Now, when I'm saying the correction on the existing batch, is it possible? If so, take that correction, put your corrective actions measures, okay? And then in that, if you can close those, you can immediately close. If no, there are certain recommendations keeping the long term in mind. Still, you can process that particular batch to the next level, providing the CAPA, you are giving the right justification for that.
The next question is from Rutva Patel. Is there any FDA requirement to have software to support CAPA?
Yeah, Rutva. In fact, if you look at the software support, now CAPA is a procedure. Now, whatever the software you are using, either from your pharma domain or from the statistical analysis, there is no mandate that which software you are supposed to do. Now, CAPA is a procedure. Now, probably for your validation or your effectiveness checking, you can use some of the statistical software. But end in mind, while doing this CAPA, FDA doesn't give any kind of the binding on using of the software. Absolutely no. It is irrespective of the software, the procedures can be followed.
We have a couple of more questions to take up. Mr. Ravi Chandran asks, what is your thought on reoccurrence of same defect, even CAPA raised, analyzed, action taken and closed?
See, if you really ask me this particular question of the reoccurrence, say when you are going to say the reoccurrence, see the reoccurrence can happen in two scenarios. One is that the major mistake what we do, we Just for the sake of formality, we do that root cause analysis. But if I don't do that detailed root cause analysis, because ultimately the problem lies within your process. It's nothing out of your control. But when I'm going to do that, my investigation analysis, if I don't do religiously and rigorously, the possibility of recurrence is very much there. And the second part could be, in spite of doing all the detailed analysis, and I will treat that case, what I'm going to discuss is probably 1 in 100. In spite of doing the detailed analysis, root cause analysis, I may not be able to even see the potential failures, or I may not be able to assess at this point of time. So in that case, the reoccurrence of the event may happen, but the reason for that reoccurrence could be something else, if I have done the right root cause analysis. Yeah?
Okay, this is the final question for the day by Rutva Patel. How can I prove that my corrective and preventive actions resolve the quality issue?
Fantastic. In fact, Rutva, that's a very important question what you have asked. So that is where, as I mentioned, once you implement your basically the recommendations, that the last step of your CAPA, that's a follow-up, is nothing but the verification. Now that is where you are supposed to create some kind of the mechanism to ensure whether this has really resolved your problem or not. Now many times, Rutva, what happens? We do that implementation and we do forget, because we don't expect that the problem may reoccur immediately. Okay? So what is important for me, as a part of the effectiveness mechanism, let me create as a part of maybe the audit checklist or whichever way, either in the statistical form or whichever other form which is convenient to us.
Thank you, Vijay. With this, we would like to conclude the session. I would like to thank all of you for coming together and being a part of this knowledge sharing session. In case you have any more queries and you would like to get in touch with Vijay, you can write to us at any point of time. You have our email IDs. You can write to Pratik at pratikb@ssasolutions.com or to Ankit at ankitr@ssasolutions.com. Thank you. Have a good day.